Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Monday Manifest. It has literally been 3 years now since the last one, and possibly even 4 years since the last one that actually discussed like a game or something. Because I know I've talked about other series in the past, like the Harvest Moon series, Final Fantasy series. That video is like over an hour long, which might be why I don't know. I don't do video essays really. It's just it was very long because I was covering all of the Final Fantasy games that I have played, which is a lot of them. um, and honestly, there's been a lot of games that I've completed over the years that I could have talked about. I just kind of I fell out of that, and I've just been uploading VODs and doing other stuff, doing the tier lists and things like that. Although tier lists are more of a newer thing, or the online quizzes as a redemption on my Twitch stream and all that. But yeah, I figured I was talking in movie night the other night because I do a movie night every Sunday with the community. And I was like, you know what? Here's the thing that I used to do. And they were like, oh, that's cool. Why don't you do that anymore? And I was just like, I just kind of fell off of it and I just didn't get back into it. So, obviously we're in completely different environs now, compared to where we originally started. I started out in a house, that I was, renting out with, 3 other people. But I ended up moving out of there, and I'm over in Houston now. Well, Pasadena, but it's still Houston. Doing my own thing, which sucks, let me tell you. Like, it's great, except for the fact that when you're not splitting rent and utilities, everything is way more expensive. So at some point, I might get a roommate. But for right now, I'm pretty happy just doing my own thing and scraping by and all that. But enough about that. The topic of the day is Control, a game by Remedy Games. It is, I wouldn't say it's a sequel to Alan Wake, but they're in the same universe, and the DLC of this game that I did very much, it explains a lot of things in Alan Wake that are not explained between the original game and Alan Wake, An American Nightmare, which I still haven't played. I think I have it. I just haven't played it. And let me tell you right now, I mean, people who watch me play through it, I did not like the original Alan Wake. I mean, the story was good. Like, I liked the way that they did things when it came to like the different characters and stuff like that. The story stuff that happened. The only thing that sucks is that it's quite an old game, and the light and shooting mechanics in that game were abysmal. They were bad. I'm sure if I played like the remastered version of it, it would probably be a lot smoother, but it's just I feel like that combat system did not age well. Like, it was not fun in a lot of play. And there was a lot of times where the AI for the enemies was just very strange, or they just constantly would appear behind you while you're already dealing with a bunch of other dudes. It just wasn't fun. But like the story of the game was interesting in the way that it centered around Alan Wake, who's actually really not the best protagonist. And I just say that because he's not like a relatable person. He's kind of an asshole and a bit egotistical. But I mean, in a way, it's kind of refreshing, I guess, to play as someone who's not someone that you really want to be. But yeah, I got through that, and I was like, eventually I'll play Alan Wake 2 or A New Nightmare, or An American Nightmare, I should say. But yeah, I was not, it's not a game that I would want to go through again. If I wanted to know more about the lore, I'd probably just read up on it, because unfortunately, in order to get all of the lore in the original Alan Wake, you have to play it on a harder difficulty, because there's just like pieces of the manuscript and stuff that aren't in the easier difficulties, or even in the normal difficulty, which is what I was playing. And I was just like, I don't want to go through this game in a harder difficulty. It was already annoying enough as normal difficulty. So that's not happening. Yeah, maybe I'll read up on it at some point. I mean, like I said, Control DLC bridged some of the gaps where I was like, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But anyway, enough about that. That was basically just a quick synopsis on how I feel about Alan Wake, which is story cool, execution was kind of ass, but it also did come out quite some time ago, so they're, and I hear from most people that Alan Wake 2 like vastly improved on like every facet of the formula. So, without any further, I actually have Control running in the background now. If you listen, you can hear like because I'm actually right next to a control point, and it makes like a specific sound when you're standing there. Because I was like, I don't know how to copyright music, blah, 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 for YouTube. So I was like, why not just stand in the control point? It should be fine. But yeah, anyway, Control starts out with you taking the role of Jesse Faden. And I mean, obviously, Control is detached from the Alan Wake games, even if it's in the same universe. It's just that DLC that really connects them more. Or, I mean, the game itself kind of explains what is going on in Bright Falls. But you are Jesse Faden, and the premise of it is that you're going into this building because you know that they have your brother because of an event that happened years prior. And you're trying to figure out where they have him. And you end up becoming the director of this company because the director of this company has a fancy gun that chooses them and makes them the director. And the previous director, Mr. Trench, unfortunately offs himself in the first, like, minute of the game. Well, I mean, technically, like, he does it, I think, as soon as or right after you enter the building, but you don't realize it until you get to his office, and you're just like, oh, okay. But then you decide to pick up the gun because why not? And then the gun chooses you, and then you have to go through all these wacky hijinks and read all these things and do all this stuff because you're like, well, I'm the director now. I guess that's my thing. I will say, like, the gunplay in Control is a vast improvement over Alan Wake. It still doesn't really feel at home. It's still, like, it feels like one of those things where, and they probably did this intentionally, but it feels like a game where it's a shooty game, but it's like it's not. Because while the gunplay is much tighter than Alan Wake, it still feels a little unwieldy at times. And there's plenty. It's really easy to get into situations where you just die because you're like, oh, there's not a lot to hide behind, and also like limited ammunition. Even though your gun regenerates bullets, there's a slight delay on it, so you have to kind of make each shot count, especially when there are lots of enemies, and the enemies like to close in on you fairly quickly, especially later on when there are types that are flying at you and exploding, and there's just a lot going on. But overall, I was pretty satisfied with the combat. There were certain parts of the DLC and just later in the game where I was just like, because it gets a little overwhelming because of new enemy types that do massive amounts of damage. I'd say my one gripe is while you can increase your health, there's no real damage reduction in this game, like innately on your character. You do get a shield, and there are a lot of times that I forgot that I had the shield. So that's on me. Especially in the DLC, the shield is kind of critical for certain parts. Like, one of my biggest gripes for this game is the fact that there are no checkpoints in the way that you would expect checkpoints to be in a newer game. Basically, every time you unlock a control point, that is your checkpoint. And it doesn't matter how far you get into some place, if you die and that area, you get sent all the way back to that control point. Granted, it does save like your items, your progress, and everything. It's just it steps you back. So in most cases, it doesn't matter. But there are some places where you're dealing with an altered world event type situation, or you're dealing with an altered item that's kind of involved. And if you die, you just get sent all the way back to the control point and have to do it all over. It's actually a problem that I had that kind of annoyed me with the first DLC, because there's this very long-winded tram section where you're riding on a tram going down a track, and you have to keep dodging between two of them to not get hit by walls. And it's a fairly lengthy segment just because it's like a rail shooter. Like, everything happens as it happens. You can't just speed through it. And I had to do that, I think, 4 times. And it's not fun having to you get shoved back to the control point, then run to the item, then start the thing. And I would have preferred if the checkpoints in certain locations, especially like with that, just brought you back to the beginning of the section you were doing rather than the control point. But, you know, I don't know. We'll see if Control 2 does that or if it's still just straight up you get sent back to the control points. But yeah, okay. Sorry, I'm like rambling on about the DLC and stuff like that. Like the flow of the story is very confusing, but it's kind of like one of the God, I don't know what you would call this storytelling, but I've seen it done before in animes and all that, where basically you're not really starting at the start. I mean, in this case, you're working your way through the building and all that, but you don't start with enough knowledge to know exactly what is going on until near the end of the game when you're able to piece a lot of things together that don't make sense or aren't really talked about. Throughout the game, Jessie is communing with somebody in her head, and we have no idea who that is until like 3/4 or more through the game. Like, you can kind of insinuate that there's something else going on there, like there's some other presence, but we don't know where it came from or why it's there. I guess it's kind of like the oh god, Beyond Two Souls, or I think that's what it's called. There was another game where you have kind of like a psychic companion, basically. Except in that game, it's like your twin brother that didn't live or something. I can't remember. I remember watching somebody go through it, and I was just like, huh, well, that's an interesting concept. Yeah. Other major thing about this game, which my friend assured me is apparently like a problem they kind of knew about, and it's just the game got pushed out anyway. The mocap is very strange for a lot of the character models in this game, Jessie especially. I mention it many times through the playthrough, which I have up on YouTube. At least I'm about halfway through uploading it. It's in the process of uploading or publishing, I should say. They are some of the twitchiest like faces, like lots of like kind of mouth spasms. The eyes are constantly like flicking about a lot. And at first I thought maybe it was just, it was like kind of like an anxiety thing. But I was like, man, I know people with anxiety who are not ever this fidgety, you know? Granted, I haven't met everybody in the world, but like if you look at like their faces and eyes while they're talking, like especially Jessie and Emily Pope. Pretty sure it's Emily. I know it's Pope. They're so twitchy, or their mouths just do things where you're like, that's not normal. It's very uncanny valley. So at first I thought it was an artistic choice, but I think it was a mix of an artistic choice and also just the mocap was not as good as they wanted, but they didn't want to have to redo everything. But yeah, you make your way through the game. You progress and you get better weapons. Your weapon can basically morph into other weapons when you upgrade it more. I pretty much just went through the whole game with the original weapon and the what the hell is it called? The shotgun version of the weapon. Yeah, why? I have the game open in front of me. I could look at it. I don't know why. Okay, the grip, which is just your normal like pistol, and it has like about 16 shots in it. It does regenerate shots after like a few seconds of not shooting, and it regenerates pretty quick. And then Shatter. Shatter is the other one, which is the shotgun type weapon, which just like tears through enemy shields, does tons of damage at close range and even medium range. And that was like my favorite weapon, just because like throughout most of the game, it's pretty trusty and can shred most enemies quickly, especially once you get a lot of weapon mods on. And it's interesting because you get, new powers throughout the game. Like you get an ability that lets you levitate. You get an ability that lets you shield against incoming attacks. One of the first ones you get is a dash, which is basically essential. I mean, actually, it is essential to beat the game because there are some platforming sections. And those are fairly well thought out. There are a couple areas where they're a little janky. It's also because I just never really got used to the controls of levitate, because press and hold the jump button. And I'm so used to other games where if you, in order to activate something like that, you like double click it, which I guess technically you can do. Yeah, you can double click it too, but I'd also like kind of hold it a little bit too long and then click again, and then I'd immediately go out of levitate. And there are places where you can just fall and die in this game. Like bottomless pit. It's not like Zelda where you fall down a hole and then they're like, "Oh, you're fine. We're just gonna put you back on a ledge and take like one of your hearts." No, you die and you lose, I think, 10% of your total stuff. You basically have kind of like a currency in the game. I can't remember what it's called. I'd probably be able to tell if I looked at my personal mods. It's a health, energy, elements. Wait, unless that was just health. I don't know. You basically you pick up this currency that you can use to upgrade your weapons, as well as like the different items you need to upgrade. So you do get quite a few like mobility tools and other things, and in the DLC you get a couple other things. Granted, in one of the DLCs you literally only use the power-ups in one location, which is basically being able to build bridges or walls out of crystals or bring the crystals out of the ground to attack enemies, which I used a lot to kill enemies because it was very helpful. Yeah, and you're basically going through, and the end goal of this game really is for Jessie to find her brother, which you do. And that's that's basically the end of the game. You also go through, you meet a cast of various characters. You're working for the Bureau. Well, you become the director, and then there's the what are they? Hotline. Not Trench. Trench is the old director who is the board. You're working for the board, and the board isn't really a person or people. The board is a big upside down pyramid that communes with you through a special phone called the Hotline, and they're basically the ones who manage the oldest house, which is where you're at. It's the Bureau of Control, but it's called the oldest house because this building kind of is just an organic thing that does its own thing. And you're just kind of a part of, and they've got research teams and everything in there, and it's one of those like hush hush, like this is a thing that's been going on since so long ago, and they go and collect items that possess certain powers or can cause issues, so they keep them away from the public and also experiment on them. Your brother just happened to be one of those things, because you managed to get away, but they got your brother because you were in an altered world event, as they like to call it, when an object of power item basically screws with things. Because you and your brother were messing with some kind of slide projector that could basically let you go to different dimensions. And so the Bureau came down, got your brother, got the slide projector, brought them in. Apparently you guys had tried to burn the slides before, but there were a couple that were still okay. And they were basically doing experiments. And you just happened to get here when they decided, the director got corrupted by something called the Hiss. And the Hiss is just kind of this red mist looking stuff, kind of like it basically just like takes over people's minds and bodies and makes them very, very hostile. And so that's the main enemy throughout the game, is you fighting a lot of Hiss officials or like higher ups in the company that got taken over that you need to put down. And you go around, and the companion that you have in you allows you to purify the Hiss. So that the control points and all that, you purify them and go through, and you're basically trying to like fix all the stuff in the building that went bad. And along the way, you find your brother. Unfortunately, your brother has also succumbed to the Hiss. So you try to find a way to get it out of him without disintegrating him, because unfortunately, earlier on, you try to help somebody out, and they just they just blow up. they just disintegrate because the hiss is too strong, and I guess regular people just can't handle having it purified. So you're just going around trying to figure stuff out, helping the board and the various committee members with problems to try to get it all sorted out, since it's something that, if it got outside of the Bureau, would cause huge problems for humanity, So you go in trying to find your brother, and then you become the director of this company, and you just have to kind of deal with it and help out, because who else is going to do it? You're the director. But yeah, like I said, the storytelling is a little stilted, but on purpose, because there's never really a point where you know everything you need to know until you get to the end of the game. And even at the end of the game, I mean, there's lots of documents on the ground. There's plenty of stuff that if you miss it, you might be like, but that doesn't make sense. But it does. It really does culminate towards the end of the game, where you're like, okay, well, this is why this happened, and this and this. And it does weave together quite well. And it is kind of nice seeing it tie in with Alan Wake, in explaining more of what the lake really is, or even if you guys have played Alan Wake, the clicker, which is literally, it's a light switch. It's a light switch that's not attached to anything, but it's an item of power, because basically these are everyday objects, but with enough kind of belief from people, they can get they kind of get minds of their own and become something more than just whatever the simple object is. Like, one of the objects you run in throughout Control a lot is a light pull switch, and it took me a little while to figure it out, but you pull that light switch 3 times, and it takes you to a random Ocean View hotel, and you have to go there multiple times throughout Control to open up new areas, to basically kind of switch reality around so you can get through areas that were originally impassable. But there's a lot of these objects. I didn't do all of them, but I did quite a few of them, and some of them give you power, some of them you just kind of tame and put them back in containment, and yeah. It's just an interesting take on things, where it's like, yeah, no, these are everyday objects that had enough people believe that there was something about them that was different that caused them to do that different thing. Like, a fridge that eats people, but it's fine. I'm sure it would have happened whether I tried to help or not anyway. Anyway, this is like a 20-minute video. I try to keep these kind of shorter, and that's another thing. I want you guys to let me know, because obviously I've seen other people do explanations of things or do video essays. I wouldn't consider this a video essay. This is very short compared to that. But some of these things are upwards of 2 to 3 hours, and I'm like, that seems really long. And also, I don't know if I have it into me to prep stuff like that. Because you actually have to kind of script things out or have talking points and things. At this point, the only thing I have on my screen is OBS, where I'm making sure everything looks okay, and Control, so I could kind of look back at stuff to remember stuff that I might have forgotten. But yeah, I want to know exactly what time frame you guys like for these kind of things. Obviously, my Final Fantasy one is over an hour long, but I was also talking about 15 different games, because that was before 16 came out. Honestly, still haven't played 16. I don't actually know if I can. I can't remember if it's still just a PS5 exclusive or if it's actually on other things. But just let me know how long you'd want these things, because I think I kind of covered the gambit of Control. I mean, I'd say I quite liked it. Some of the combat stuff was annoying, but it was a very interesting world they built. There was a lot of cool stuff to kind of mess with and learn, and the puzzles dealing with some of these different objects. You're just like, oh no, that's pretty cool. Dealing with the DLC with the astral plane spilling out into the real world, and well, I say the real world, you're still in the oldest house, but I mean it's as real as it gets, I guess. And then the next one, which dealt with Bright Falls and shed more light on the Alan Wake, the stuff that happened during Alan Wake. I think they did a really good job. Would I play through this game again? I don't know, but I'm usually kind of a one and done person anyway. I might go through and do more of the objects and all that, because there were like 11 or more missions that I hadn't done at the end. Granted, some of them were just like cleanup type thingies, but I think I got like a good part of the story, and I know they're coming out with Control too. So that I definitely want to play. Like after playing this, and because I would assume if it's anything like Alan Wake and Alan Wake 2, Control 2 will probably fix any issues that I had with this game and just improve upon the formula and maybe add more items and stuff like that that we didn't get to mess with. But yeah, so overall, quite like Control. I would recommend it to anybody that likes a good like shooty / mystery type game. Like if you like SCP, you'll definitely love this game because it's basically in the same vein. Obviously there aren't like over 1,000 objects to deal with like with SCP, or if you go on their site, there's like so much stuff. But it's kind of cool. Like the backstories of these items are reading just the reports and being like, oh, that's kind of silly how that works or this works. Or just like some of the items that you would expect to be incredibly innocuous are some of the most dangerous things. And you're just like, oh, okay, cool. That's nice. Oh, yeah. Thank you. It feels good to get one of these out again. I'm definitely going to try to work on making more based off of things that I've played recently. Like I'm going through Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. I'll definitely do a video on that once I'm done, while it's fresh in my mind. I should probably do one about Tears of the Kingdom, because honestly, I was a little harsh on Tears of the Kingdom when I finished it on stream, partially because I had been streaming it, and I don't know, I'm already impatient to begin with, and I probably graded it a lot more harshly than I should have. It didn't help that I was treating the game like Breath of the Wild when it's really not. It's an extension of Breath of the Wild, and it has a lot of similarities, but if you try to play it the exact same way, it's just going to punish you, and it's not going to be a great experience. Like, that's like playing it in challenge mode, basically, and I don't do good with that kind of stuff. But yeah, thank you all for being here on this Monday Manifest. I hope you enjoyed it. Just, yeah, let me know what you think, how you feel about different like lengths of things, like what your upper limit for this kind of thing is. Because I feel like about 20 to 30 minutes for like a single game discussion is pretty good. The Final Fantasy one would have been way longer, but I kind of had very quick synopses of each one. So, you know, because if I had talked like 20 minutes about every single one, that would have been like a 4 to 5 hour video. And nobody wants that, I don't think. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Monday. Thank you so much for being here. It's good to get back into this and try it again, see how it goes. Until next time, you guys have a fantastic day and try not to get eaten by any fridges or anything.